Winter is a season of silence. The snow falls thick, muffling sound, erasing footprints. But in that stillness, something stirs. Forgotten spirits, unseen predators, and horrors born from the cold itself. Tonight I bring you 5 true and disturbing winter horror stories, accounts so chilling they will make you question what lurks just beyond the veil of the snowstorm. Some say the cold preserves the dead. But sometimes, it refuses to let them rest. Turn up the heat, lock your doors, and whatever you do, don't look outside. Alex and his 2 friends Dylan and Jake were experienced hikers. They had trekked through countless forests, but something about the dead silence of the Pennsylvania woods in winter unsettled them. No birds, no rustling leaves, just the sound of their own breath turning to mist in the frigid air. They had planned to reach a frozen lake before dark, but the snowfall grew thicker, swallowing their trail. Panic set in as they realized they had no signal, no clear way back. Just when they decided to turn around, they saw him. At first, they thought he was a lost hiker. His clothes were old, too old, a tattered coat, leather boots stiff with ice, and fingers blackened from the cold. His eyes were open, wide open, too wide. "Sir, are you okay?" Alex called. No response, just the vacant, frozen stare. Then Dylan did something he would regret for the rest of his life. He touched him. The frozen man's neck twisted unnaturally, his face now inches from Dylan's. His lips parted but no breath escaped, no warmth, just a horrible rasping sound. They ran without knowing where they were going, ran until their legs burned and their lungs ached. When they finally found their way back, rangers dismissed their story, but an old hunter overheard and pulled them aside. He told them of a man who had gone missing decades ago, frozen in those woods, doomed to remain, waiting, watching. They never found that exact spot again. Maybe it found them. For Ethan and Clara, a winter getaway at Sweden's famous ice hotel was supposed to be magical. Every room was sculpted from ice, every bed covered in reindeer fur, and the silence was absolute. The first night was peaceful. The second, something changed. Clara awoke to a faint scratching sound. It was subtle at first, like the ice shifting, but it wasn't coming from the walls, it was coming from inside them. She nudged Ethan awake. "Do you hear that?" He did. It was growing louder. Then, the whispering started. A woman's voice, distorted, hollow, pleading. Ethan pressed his ear to the wall, and for a split second he felt something press back. They fled to the lobby, demanding another room. The staff didn't react the way they expected, no shock, no disbelief. Just a quiet, knowing glance. "The ice moves," they said. "It holds memories." They refused to stay another night. But locals whisper about a woman who disappeared in the hotel's early years, her body never found, and when the ice melts in the spring, some claim they saw her face. Michael had been driving for hours, battling the relentless blizzard. The road was deserted, the world outside swallowed by white. That's when he saw her, a woman standing on the side of the road, shivering, wrapped in nothing but a thin dress. He hesitated but couldn't leave her there. He pulled over. "Need a ride?" She nodded, her face hidden beneath a cascade of wet, frozen hair. "Where are you headed?" he asked. A long pause. Then, a whisper. "Home." She gave an address, one that sounded vaguely familiar, but something felt off. She barely moved. Her skin seemed too pale, too stiff. And each time he glanced in the mirror, she seemed closer. When he arrived at the address, the house was dark, abandoned. Confused, he turned to ask her if she was sure, but the back seat was empty. Only a damp, ice-cold spot remained. The next day he looked up the address. A woman had died in a car accident on that very road, trying to get home. In a snowstorm. Every winter she still tries. Mark had always preferred isolation. The peace, the solitude, it was all he needed to escape from the noise of the world. Every winter he retreated to his remote cabin in the mountains, far from any neighbor or light pollution. Just the cold, the quiet, and his thoughts. This winter felt no different. The first night, the wind howled, rattling the windows, but Mark found comfort in the isolation. But on the second night, he woke to something strange, a faint sound, footsteps. At first he thought it was just the wind shifting the snow, but then he heard it again, a distinct, deliberate crunch of boots on the roof. His heart began to race. Snow shouldn't make that sound. Not in the dead of night, not with no one else around. Mark tried to shake it off. Maybe an animal, a large bird or a raccoon. He grabbed his rifle just in case. But when he opened the door to step outside, there was nothing. No prints in the snow. No signs of life. Just a deep, untouched blanket of white stretching into the distance. He returned inside, a sense of unease settling in his chest. It was too quiet, too still. That's when he heard it again. This time, right above him. The slow, deliberate breathing. It was close. Too close. Mark didn't sleep the rest of the night. When morning came, he tried to rationalize it. Perhaps it was just the wind or his imagination. But deep down he knew something had been on the roof. Something that wasn't supposed to be there. Was it just an animal? Or had he awoken something far darker in the quiet wilderness? Emily had never been one for superstitions. She'd always prided herself on being practical, grounded. But when she moved into her new apartment, there was one thing she couldn't shake. The large, antique mirror left behind by the previous tenant. The first few nights were uneventful. The mirror, covered with a sheet, remained in the corner, just another piece of furniture. But then, on the third night, Emily noticed something strange. She was lying in bed, drifting into sleep when she heard it. A faint knock against glass, so soft it could have been her imagination. But then it came again, this time louder. It was coming from inside the mirror. Emily tried to ignore it. But every night after that the sound grew louder, more persistent. Until one night she woke to something far more disturbing. As she turned to look, she saw her reflection, smiling. But Emily hadn't smiled. Her face remained frozen in fear. She looked away, her heart racing. But when she turned back to the mirror, it was there again. Her reflection, staring at her with an unnatural grin. By the fourth night, Emily couldn't take it any longer. She threw a blanket over the mirror, hiding it from view. But even in the dark she could still hear it, the laughter, soft and taunting, like a shadow following her every move. Then one night she awoke to find the blanket had shifted, just a little. The mirror wasn't covered anymore, and this time the reflection wasn't smiling. It was grinning, broadly, unnervingly, and it wasn't her reflection at all. Frozen in place, Emily couldn't tear her eyes away. The reflection stepped out of the glass, slowly, creeping toward her, and all she could do was stare, paralyzed by the unholy presence that had emerged from the icy depths of the mirror. Some say mirrors reflect the soul, but what if they reflect something far worse, something that waits patiently for you to turn your back? The winter cold is more than just a season. It's a force, a silence that swallows sound, a darkness that hides things better left unseen. Some of these stories ended in escape, but not all of them. Tell me, which story haunted you the most? Have you ever felt something watching you on a winter night? Leave your thoughts in the comments below if you dare. Stay safe, stay warm, and remember, not everything lost in the snow stays buried.